Boom.
All right. Sorry about that. Had to restart things. Thank you. All right. So, not sure why it wasn't rotating, but that's why you're seeing a new live stream here. What's going on, everyone? Sean Mitchell, all things EV. Got my friend Ben here, who just took delivery of a long range Model Y, which we're sitting in.
Right on.
Congratulations.
Thank you much. Thank you, Tesla.
So, this is your second Tesla. You also have a long range Model 3, too.
That is correct.
This is going to be a really interesting chat here, and please feel free and put your comments or your questions that you've got. You've got some really nice perspective because you're an owner of a Model 3 and now a Model Y, and so you'll be able to give some comparison between the two, how they feel, in getting into the car, the ingress, as well as trunk space, and any other sort of interesting things. So we talked about a few things before we hit record, but what's your overall take of the car? What do you think about it?
It's just as magical as the Model 3. I prefer it slightly over, but they're both just incredible, and this one does not disappoint.
And this is, that's also an asking, this is a non-performance version.
Correct. Just long range, but does have the upgraded induction wheels.
Some of your first impressions of the car overall in terms of differences between Model 3 and Model Y, like what are some of the first things that come to mind?
Well, like many of us, I come out of an SUV, so
What did you have before?
a Toyota 4Runner.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so I was used to sitting up a bit higher and feeling a little more competent and sort of thing. But right away, I feel like I'm sitting up higher, have a better view. Getting in and out, we can talk about in detail, but is much friendlier. Especially, I'm just under 6 feet tall, so not super tall, but it makes a big difference, that extra few inches of height.
Let's talk about something that a lot of people are really curious about, which is the not the
Oh, heat pump.
yeah, the heat pump. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned some interesting things about it. What are some of your observations there? It does make a little bit of a noise, right?
It does make a bit of a noise, although, as I understand it, they're making a shroud that will retrofit, and they will be retrofitting the first of us that got these. But it's a pronounced, loud sound. If you're preheating it in your garage or something like that, you might even be startled by it. But again, that sounds like there's a pretty good fix of that.
It's sort of like a light hum, similar in consistency to maybe like a lawnmower, but not as deafening, I think, as an electric lawnmower. But it is sort of this consistent hum that you hear when that heat pump is running.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not terribly bad. I've recorded next to it, and it does just fine. So it is not any kind of game changer. As soon as you're in the car and driving, it's gone away and not relevant.
So you live west of downtown Denver in the mountains.
Hmm.
Have you driven this in snow? And do you have any takeaways in comparison to the Model 3? Is it handled better? You feel a little bit more confident? It does sit a little bit higher.
Yeah.
So how does this handle in the snow?
Well, to be fair to this car, the Model 3 is awesome in the snow. It is the best. I've owned lots of vehicles that were specifically designed for snow, like a Volvo XC70, and the Model 3 is heads above that. So it's got a high barrier, this Model Y, to overcome to be better than the Model 3, but it's right there. Its only limitation, as far as I'm concerned, are the fact that it has just sort of more street tires. They are considered all season, but they're more street tires, and we get legit snow up here in the mountains. So no vehicle without proper snow tires is going to be excellent. That said, in just light, icy, snowy conditions, it's fantastic. Really does what you tell it to do.
So if you had the option, the family's going somewhere, maybe out to dinner, it's snowing or it just snowed, which one gives you the most confidence to get around and not have any issues?
Probably just because it's what I'm used to, just riding slightly higher and feeling like there's greater clearance. The Model 3 traction is excellent. It's really just a matter of, say 8 or 10 inches of snow, you're probably going to soon bottom out in the Model 3, as you won't necessarily in the Model Y. So that would be, I would take the Y in that case.
Question about ride quality. What's the noise like?
It's good. I will have to give the better marks to the Model 3. Now, this could just be that mine is one of the very first Model Ys. So it could be some minor finish issues with the back seats, but its ride noise is markedly high on the Model 3. But I'm gonna right now say that's probably because it's one of the first out on the streets.
So you've got just under 900 miles on the car. You've had it for what, a few weeks?
Correct.
In terms of energy usage, I saw a question about your watt hours per mile. I was trying to find it here to pull it up, but maybe a little bit less efficient
Yeah,
than the Model 3.
it's hard to say right now. It's one of the questions that I really want to answer, because it is important to everyone. But right now, in fairness, we've had really cold the last couple of weeks in
Sure.
Colorado. Lots of snow, particularly up here in the mountains. What I was really wanting to get a sense of is whether that heat pump was helping to increase that range during that sort of weather, and it appears that it is, but it's only anecdotal at this time, as I've only had a few hours on the wheel behind that, so I can't safely say. I'm not noticing that it's remarkably lower than the estimates of 316 miles driven at a normal pace. So I think it's going to do quite well, but it's going to need more study than I've given it.
I'm going to get a couple of hours with this on the road. I got to go get my real camera because
Sure thing.
I forgot it. So stay tuned for a little bit more of a formal review of the vehicle. I'll get a chance to drive it to my house and back, and we'll have a little bit more of an opinion in terms of the efficiency. So I'm looking forward to that. Fit and finish in comparison to Model 3, pretty similar, what you would expect.
Absolutely. It's in fact, you were remarking earlier that it's, as you sat in it, that it's remarkably similar. It's virtually identical. The only real difference, as far as I can tell, is that these seats in the Model Y are on pillars and sit up slightly higher. We've got a higher roof line now, so we can do that, and that also adds to the perception just outside. But in terms of fit and finish, it's, I would say, identical.
Yeah, what you would expect from a vehicle that shares 75% of the same parts with the Model 3. Not perfect in terms of fit and finish in quality, quality control. Certainly some opportunity to improve that, but you can tell that this is not early VIN number Model 3s where they had quite a few issues, more visible issues. These, if you're really going through with a fine eye, you can probably pick up on some of the things that maybe they should have caught before it left the factory. Acceleration and performance wise, what is that? How is that for you?
I feel like, and again, I have not used any sort of accelerometer, something that digitally displays what I'm feeling, which would give a more precise answer. But I feel like the Model 3 might edge this out on, say, a 0 to 60, but by a nominal amount. And that's just gut feeling. Somebody will probably point out that that's totally wrong, but that's my sense. Overall, though, they're both blistering fast. I mean, I've never driven a car as fast, both the Model Y and the Model 3, so you won't be disappointed at all in the acceleration of this vehicle. It does not feel like a 4,500-pound vehicle.
Have you had a chance to put much stuff in the back yet in terms of storage?
We did. We were way behind. We went to Costco recently for a family of 5, and filled up the back end and dropped the 2 rear seats. And it is, we didn't need to drop the 2 rear seats. Let's put it that way. There is just abundance of storage, both on top of the lower chambers as well as side pockets. It's that's probably the best utility item of this vehicle, is the storage in the back.
The hatchback is just phenomenal.
Lovely, yes.
You're coming from the 3, which is a trunk. S and X have a hatch, and that's one of my favorite things,
Mm-hmm.
because when I go from winter tires to summer tires, I've got 4 tires
Mm-hmm.
in the back of my S, and I can lay down the seats and
Yeah,
fit all 4. And those are
totally.
big. I mean, when you
Absolutely.
actually put them in the car, you got some context for the size of them. And I think
Mm-hmm.
you probably would be able to easily do that
Mm-hmm.
with the Model Y too.
Indeed. Yeah, yeah. That's exactly right. I will, in fairness to my wife, she loves her Model 3, but she is probably going to switch out to a Model Y for that reason only. Just the utility, and the full functioning of it. You can open the Model 3 trunk from the screen up here, but it just unlatches. It doesn't pop up or go back down. So the Model Y, like modern vehicles, opens and closes remotely, and that's super nice.
Got a question about opening the hatch in the
Mm-hmm.
garage.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Almost opens completely. You've set the settings so that it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't hit the top of the garage door, right?
You can certainly do that. Mine actually, once inside, my garage is high enough at its full extension, it doesn't touch. But if you do have a shorter garage or some sort of obstruction overhand, if you're in an apartment, you have a lower ceiling, you just, when you open it the first time, you hold on to it where you want it to stop,
Mm-hmm.
push and hold 3 seconds, and it memorizes that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and your access to the garage looks like maybe it's what, 9 feet entry, or
Uh, no, entry's actually fairly short at about 8 feet.
8 feet.
Yeah,
But
but
then once you get in, you probably,
hmm
what is that? Another couple of inches, so 10 feet.
yeah, 10 feet, 9.5 feet is the ceiling in the garage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk to me about, you said you're a family of 5, so
hmm
have you fit all 3 boys in the back seat, and what do they think about it?
They in the Model 3, they don't want to go for more than an hour, so we don't go too far in the Model 3, unless we were setting up for long-term driving. But in the Model Y, they love it. There's substantially more room, not just leg room, but side to side. There's more room, and so they're thrilled. So long as they have that and USB-C chargers, they don't need much more.
They're happy kids.
Indeed.
I really love the headroom in the back. That was the
hmm
first thing that I noticed when I got in and did the test ride at the
hmm
launch event last year. There was just, as a taller guy, I'm a little bit more sensitive
hmm
to headroom, and the fact that I didn't have any issues with that in the back, I thought was pretty spectacular. The way that the Model 3 slopes down in the back does limit a little
hmm
bit of that headroom, and then I think I wonder if the bench sits any higher or lower. I do remember in the Model 3
hmm
being quite high, sitting
Yeah.
in that back row. I'll have to test that out, maybe in the full review that I'll do.
Sure thing. Yeah, I have done that. No, I'm not as tall as you. I'm just under 6 feet tall, but I have immense room in the center as well, and don't feel like I'm riding too high, and my knees are good. But some of it's gonna depend on who the guy is next to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts? We'll probably go ahead and wrap up here in the next. The guy mentioning our mask. We're just trying to play it safe and here in Colorado and practice safe distancing, safe social distancing. So, any other questions before we wrap up here? And then Ben, any other thoughts, takeaways from the Model Y? What about the frunk? What do you think about the frunk?
The frunk is, yeah, that's a good question. Basically, area-wise, it's about the same in terms of one dimension, but in terms of volume, it's substantially greater because the cavity is about twice as deep.
Mm-hmm.
So it has just more utility, like everything on this vehicle. There was a comment just recently about wishing it was bigger, and I'll be honest, we're not a small family. My wife is as tall as I am. I've got 3 children that are in the back, and it is extremely spacious considering its overall outside footprint. And that, obviously just due to the fact that we don't,
Mm-hmm.
it really is nice. Not everybody's needs, but I think it's going to be the big thing in the EV market with
Mm-hmm.
all of its new utility.
It is very functional. Got a question about whether if it heats any faster on preheat or preconditioning.
Yeah, we were just talking about this off camera earlier. The analogy I use is if you have a hairdryer and turn it on, it's instantly hot. That's like Model 3. However, you maybe only wait 15 seconds max for this thing to run through the heat pump. It's exceptionally fast considering what it's doing, and then the heat it puts out is really good without draining the battery. So I'd say that's a big change, positive change, and the amount of time to heat up is nominal.
Uh, Charging. You mentioned something real quirky about the charging when you plug it in. Talk about that. I think something that Tesla
Oh,
should
right.
consider modifying or trying to find a solution via software updates.
Yeah, exactly. So when you plug in my Model 3, you'll notice the amperage goes up. I have a wall charger here. It goes up to 48 amps. And then the miles per hour quickly build to 44 within a minute or two. And it's charging at 44 until it gets to that point where it needs to slow down to top off. On the Model Y, it appears, I've noticed it now taking anywhere from 20, 30 minutes to an hour. It'll ramp up, same 48 amps, but it only brings it up to about 15 miles per hour of charging, and I think it's somehow conditioning the battery, and then builds up to 44. So
How long does that take for it to bump up to the
I've
next?
just noticed, and again, this hasn't been scientific, so it could be operator error too, but I believe through online that I'm learning that it's about 30 minutes to an hour to build up to that time. But that needs more verification. But it is happening. It happens every time. I just don't know the exact amount of time it takes.
And you some others who have a Model Y experience the same thing.
Exactly. Yep. There's a few people online that are posting about it right now. So yeah, it's a known thing.
Ideal if you're not in a hurry, but if you're in a hurry and you're charging at home, maybe it's not the most practical thing if it's being that slow.
Yeah, I'll be honest. In my personal, the way we use our vehicles, it's not a thing. If I'm in a hurry, I would go to a supercharger or something like that. But it's really, we're charging at times that it doesn't really matter. So I'm not put off by it, but it is noticeable. And if you are somebody who needs to come in, boom, charge quick, it might be a concern.
How old are your kids? I'm curious to know how big they are and how comfortable they're sitting in the second row.
Yeah, so good question. I have a 13-year-old boy, a 9-year-old boy, and a 5-year-old boy, and you can imagine the two older ones sit on the outside, and the 5-year-old sits in the middle, and they're just fine. I mean, again, we don't really go in any. We go skiing, we do things like that, but we haven't really taken any super long trips. But they're fine.
Everyone in the car. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, actually, that I was prepared to buy the Model X, and I wasn't really keen on the back. I just don't like the way that rides, even though it works just fine. They have the roof rails now, and so I've got you can see it from where we're sitting right now. I've got a very low profile kit box that I'll put on top there, and it's the most aerodynamic on the market. Innova is the company,
Okay.
and I'm going to use the Tesla rails that just came out.
Have you ordered that yet?
I have, yep. Okay. So they're, I don't know when they'll get here, but they're on the way.
Great. Super cool. So if you like this insight, make sure and tune in to my formal review. I'm going to do the recording today and then probably put that up in the next 24 hours. Ben, thank you so much for taking some time to answer some people's questions.
Indeed.
You have a podcast, and I'd love for you to tell people about it because who doesn't need a really good, informative, educational podcast to listen to?
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks for letting me talk about that. The name of the podcast and YouTube channel is Unearned Confidence. If you go to theucshow.com, you can find links to all of our media. We talk about all things electric, and we get to talk to very cool people, and we just recently talked to Sean, so check it out.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. And again, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe because I will be publishing a more formal Model Y review here, probably within the next 24 to 48 hours. Stay tuned for that. And I hope you all have a wonderful day and evening. Talk to you soon.